Hello, and welcome to the Rollwise Podcast, the show where we talk about things related to tabletop RPGs. Today, we're going to be revisiting a topic that we talked about pretty recently. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Mothership RPG because recently we decided to have kind of a short game. We played Alone in the Deep. If you guys are interested in seeing how the game went, we obviously have a stream of it over on the we have a playlist for it, I guess, in the playlist, whatever the fuck that's
Well, it's
called.
2 episodes, but it was on the
Yeah,
live stream. Yeah.
two episodes of live stream play where we played through Alone in the Deep, a really cool little miniature adventure, A4 adventure. It's just one page, and I think we had a lot of fun playing it. But I thought we would revisit Mothership because this is one of those games that, um, at least I'm still kind of on the fence about whether I like it or not. I think Brent likes it a little bit. I don't want to speak for you, but we're
Yeah,
here to
I
talk
like it.
about it. And I think why not revisit it to see if any of our opinions have changed after getting a little bit more play time. One of us running the game, two players, all that kind of jazz. See how it goes. So, setting the scene. So first and foremost, if anybody hasn't seen our previous video on Mothership, Mothership is a sci-fi horror RPG. It's very minimalistic in terms of like the amount of rules and everything that they have along there. It's a very lethal system. It incorporates a lot of fun mechanics like panic, wounds, and stuff like that. So your characters have a very horrible descent into death over the course of maybe 15 minutes or a couple sessions, whatever your high score tends to be. Um, but it's a pretty easy game to pick up. I think that there's a lot of great design principles behind it. It's got a wonderful Warden's manual. I spoke about this on the stream, but I think it's got some really good stuff behind it. What did you guys' impression? Now you've played it a couple times. Do you have like some favorite mechanics that this game has that you are kind of starting to cozy up to, or do you have
I,
some stuff that you don't like so much?
I just like that the game is really easy. It's simple rule set. You can pick it up. It's not overly complicated. It's
Mhm,
also flexible. Like you can do like space games, the submarine game. You could probably
mhm,
do other stuff. Cult, cult intrigue, stuff like that. And
mhm,
I think that's one of the reasons the strength of the game is that it's flexible. I guess one thing that I would say that I'm not sure about the game is just like I can't see playing this game for 6 months. Like I can't see like your Mothership campaign type style of game. I think this is more like one or two shots, three shots, maybe a couple weeks. If it's a really complicated story, but I don't see the longevity of it being played for longer periods of time. It's a more modern game in that way.
yeah. Do you think so? From your perspective, like, do you think that's just because characters die too quickly, or because just the sci-fi horror genre it pegs it well? Because I mean, typically, not a lot of survivors in sci-fi horror as a whole.
Well, yeah, I think part of it is just the longevity of the characters. You're probably going to have in any size game time. You're probably going to have multiple characters instead of one, so
Mhm,
you're not going to be as invested in the characters. I don't think, which is always a problem for games I consider like a one shot game.
mhm.
But also just I just feel like it's written to be episodic. It's not written to be a long campaign. Like long stories are probably possible. It just doesn't feel like the game caters to that as much as more traditional role playing games.
Sure. Yeah, and I can see that. Seems pretty easy for your character to perish at the hands of some unknown in the vast void of space. Jeff, what about you, man? So since we played this a couple times, what kind of mechanics are you liking? Do you have anything that you stand out that you're like,
I I
"Ugh."
feel like I'm like even though the rules are simple, I
Mhm,
feel that after 3 plays now, I'm just starting to figure out how to play the characters. Like because it's we talked about it at the end of the stream, but with your stats being so low and rolling D100s, there's a lot of failures. And so you've
mhm,
got to figure out ways to make the few skills that you have and the bonuses that they give you
mhm.
apply to the situation. You've kind of got to gamify the system, and it's a little counter to the way some other systems kind of work, where
Mhm.
you apply bonuses when they're necessary, and this time you're trying to steer things to get there so that your bonuses apply so that you have a
Sure.
chance of doing something. But it's definitely a system that if you're rolling dice, you may be sticking your neck out too far. But I still have fun playing it. Like I was excited that we actually survived. I mean, my character almost died or came close
multiple times.
I was really pushing there at the end. I don't know. Well, actually, I wasn't. You guys were just having like it was a cool mechanic that like you set a timer and you basically just insert monsters. By the way, spoilers for Alone in the Deep. If you happen to be playing or running that in the near future, you may hear spoilers as part of this that kind of give at least context for some of the reasons why we are talking the way we're talking.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel like I would I would definitely play Mothership again. I would definitely if I was at a convention or something and there was a Mothership game and the scenario sounded at all interesting, I would sit down and play. I think I kind of like the system. I don't know that I love it, but I want to play more of it, and I think that's all that matters.
Yeah, and another thing that's different than a lot of games is like in Mothership is your character is like I said before, your character is not heroic. Even your characters in Alien, because of the nature of like Ripley being heroic but not necessarily skilled, there's still that hint of heroism. Mothership characters really aren't that. Like if you're a space trucker, you're a space trucker. You have skills that represent being a space trucker. You don't necessarily know how to fight. You don't necessarily know about aliens. You know how to haul things, like about ships. And being in a situation where those skills are going to come up is like if you're going to run into problems probably, and that's one of the things that I think makes Mothership neat. Is I think the more you play it, the more you will learn to work around situations so you don't have to roll dice. And really, like we said, if you get in combat, you're probably in trouble. So there's an inevitable like circumstance that you'll lose your character eventually, probably, or just get some horrific wound.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is I'm not exactly certain, but it feels like characters will die to wounds, die to panic and all those kind of things, probably more frequently than like character death, like outright character death. I could be wrong, obviously, but it feels like there's a high chance to panic yourself into a situation where you're just like your character's unusable or something.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
you're essentially incapacitated.
But I'd be curious to see if that actually plays out because it, like in Brent's case, he was a Marine with the lower end of hit points.
Right.
Yeah,
but I didn't get
your hit points were really low.
Yeah, but I didn't get hurt I didn't get hurt as bad as you did.
You almost
I got slammed around.
I also could fight things, which killing the things became an important kind of piece.
Yeah, as the scientist, I was next to worthless. At killing the monster. I figured out some things about them.
Yeah.
But it didn't help me when I came up.
So here's a question I have, because character creation in Mothership is exceptionally simple. And as far as Mothership, as far as design for a character sheet, I absolutely love the character sheet in Mothership. Its simplicity, how it basically teaches you the sheet as you fill it out. It is like I've actually never seen a character sheet that has walked me through so well the character creation process, because it's not exactly complicated, but it also is very like you don't even need to sit down with another person to have a character filled out.
Right.
Now, what it means is different. Like
it's actually all there. Like everything you need to make the character in Mothership is in the thing. You actually don't need to crack the book.
Which is nice. I kind of like that, especially from a new player perspective. So the one thing that I did this time, and I was trying to challenge myself because I was reading the Warren manual and was talking about like try to use the player skills as like a wish list as to things I want to see in that. I tried to give you guys freedom to like create whatever character you want. Would you have selected a different character if you would have known, hey, you're going on a deep sea mission in a submarine? On a submarine that basically does mineral and biological research. Would you have chosen a different character than the one you had played in that situation?
Probably not. I wouldn't have. I guess maybe I would have leaned to somebody who could be more actual, like useful for the submarine, like as in who could repair stuff. Who had those? Maybe the space trucker because they were the android because they would have had those skills. Like being like an offensive character on the ship was helpful, but didn't seem in place all the time. but I mean, like I said, it was helpful. He was just dumb about everything. Um,
Fix the ship. No.
no, that's not what I'm here for. I'll just make it worse. Although he did go in and put the plates in, so that helped. But yeah, maybe I don't know. I wanted to play a character this time that could kill the monster if there was one. And he succeeded in that. So
And that's not always the case. Sometimes the monsters, you go in with your confidence of I can kill it, and you end up either a seed bed for monsters or
I could at least make a strong try though in this case, which is what I was what that was more what I was looking for, is if I had to fight something I wanted to be able to. And this is one of those difficult. I think the difficult part for Mothership for like a GM is, like you said, if people have skills, you have to change things in the scenario to make those skills matter. As the GM, because if you don't, like, the only skill that's ever probably going to matter is fighting, because you're at some point probably going to try and do something about the monster attacking you.
Should maybe something you should do something,
and sometimes that's hard as a GM, is trying to make that customize the scenario for the characters. And I think Mothership probably needs that quite a bit, more than some other systems where you have like a ton of skills that you can roll dice for anything. Being Mothership has very specific dice skills. Those specific dice skills have to come up.
Sure. And Jeff, what about you? Would you?
I mean, I knew we were going to be on a ship. I think I thought it was more of a ship in space right at first than like a larger research vessel than a sub. But I decided to go with the scientist. I found a lot of the breadcrumbs. I couldn't really repair anything, and I couldn't really fight anything. I mean, I had a 32% chance to do those things, I guess. I just failed miserably at that. But no, I was trying to play something different because I played the Space Trucker, I think, the last game we played. And the characters actually, you have some skills that apply to a lot of like a broad range of situations in a general sense. And so but that's the design of all the classes. So, I tried, I failed, I found breadcrumbs, I furthered the plot.
You
almost became food for the plot.
You technically did more in the game than I did narratively. Like, you pretty much found out where all the problems were. So I would say that was successful.
No, yeah. So I don't think I would. I don't think, going back, I think the scientist was fine. Like, it was a necessary. I think somebody needed to play a scientist, so I liked it.
Yeah. No, it's actually kind of interesting because the game really suggests that if it's like part of your wheelhouse, don't make them roll for it. So it's kind of an obvious departure from D&D style. We have a difficulty 5 check to make here on a D20, and you're like, I can't have it.
No flavor rolls, no.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how you do, sort of things.
So I guess the interesting part for me to ask then is, because it is a sci-fi horror RPG, and it feels like the game is very much a storytelling game. Like, this game is I feel with the mechanics and everything like that, your goal is to kind of lean into the story a lot. And that's why I think it tells a really good, concise story. I don't know if it tells a very good, epic, long story, but it tells like a good, concise story. But do you feel like that? Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, did you like at least have the impression of isolation and kind of the horror? Did you feel like the horror was building up with this one?
I did.
Or did you?
Felt the tension.
Did you get some tension out of that?
Yeah, it was a very good horror game. It hit it hit all the main tropes. The sense of claustrophobia, the kind of fear of the water, the fear of being close to the balloon guy floating in the tank. I think those were all fostered very well.
Good. Well, I just kind of curious because I mean it one of the things that you mentioned is that like submarines are very good for creating a claustrophobic, isolated space, because like just like in space, obviously, like, where do you run? You just really can't. And the submarine always has everyone's memory of submarines is they tend to be very claustrophobic. But
Well, yeah, there's small
um,
tunnels. I mean,
mhm.
like if you've ever known anybody who was in a submarine, like people talk about getting stuck. Like one of my uncles didn't was a mechanic on a submarine, and he talked about a guy getting stuck, and they just had to like load him up with, like they knocked him out essentially with drugs, and then when his body went limp, they could squeeze him out of the spot where he's stuck in.
Or at least he wasn't
That's
there
horrific.
to protest too much about being.
Well, when you go completely slack, usually you can bend in ways that you're not conscious of. So they could pull him out because he
Mhm.
wasn't. Because what happens is a lot of times you're not stuck, you're freaking out, and you feel
Mhm.
like
Right.
you're
You're
stuck.
tense.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
tense up, and that's what gets you stuck. So they loaded him up with like knocked him out and then pulled him out.
Yeah.
And so that sort of like idea of it's the squeeze, like you talk about in a cave system, like that sort of thing exists in submarines, and that sort of thing is pretty scary.
Yeah.
So
I'm not a small guy, but I went into there was a sub down in the bay we have here, and I went inside of it. It was bigger than I expected it to be, but there were definitely lots of tight corners in that sub. Like you were just like, well, there's obviously padding on this door for a reason because I'd crack my skull
oh yeah,
otherwise.
yeah.
So, so I think that it was a good story. I liked it. And Jeff, you said it was a good horror. It scratched that particular sci-fi horror itch for you.
No, it did, and the tension ratcheted. Like it was like, hey, a member of the crew's missing.
Hmm.
Hey, we can't surface. Hey, there's water leaking in. Hey, there's things on the boat trying to kill us. Oh my God, they're around every corner.
Yeah. Yeah, the not knowing what it was a very good element until
Mhm.
it came out. Like you did a good with that review, that build to reveal.
Yeah, and one of the things I did like about this is that the monsters themselves, they were numerous, but not like tough, if that makes sense. So like they really based on what I was reading online, because I was trying to understand the adventure when I was reading through it and everything like that, is they were like, well, it has 2 hit points, and I was like, well, doesn't it have any like it has 2 wounds or whatever it is. I was like, doesn't it have any health? They're like, what is going on here? And the premise behind it was is that it really only took 2 hits, give or take, right? You can obviously have a small one that could take less. You can have a bigger one that give more. But the point was is the average one really only took 2 hits at most, and that was so their threat wasn't that they themselves were tough. Their threat was that they had razor sharp teeth, and they would climb into whatever orifice they could find.
The,
In Jeff's case, that was ear and
the
throat.
yeah, the body horror. I mean, okay, so maybe it's not fully body horror, but you get what I mean. The them tunneling into you from whatever they could bite through. It was a nice touch.
That's strongly body horror, but I think that's interesting because what the game plays to is it's doing that thing. Like if you encounter these things, which you're going to encounter them multiple times, they can't be too tough because you're making the characters roll for
Mhm.
combat, and if they're rolling dice, they're probably not going to do well. So
Exactly. And I thought that was a nice touch of it. And what was also fun, how I was having you like roll a d8 every so often? That was basically a compartment that they were chewing into effectively.
mm,
And so the adventure was kind enough to have like this is what you normally see in the compartment to set the scene, and this is what happens when the Olek has gotten in there. And it was like,
Oh man.
and it was funny because like the first roll of the second session, you got like Jeff was like, "Oh, roll the escape pod," and then you were like, "I'm gonna go in the escape pod," and I was like, "How perfect is that fucking thing? Like amazing." Okay, you go in the escape pod. It's eating graham crackers.
yeah, exactly.
Oh god. I mean, it was just
We're
like,
always fortunate in in that manner.
mhm. Yeah, like you guys were
Yeah,
pretty much like
we're our own
every
worst
every
enemies.
second it was there. It felt like. I mean, not that there's a ton of compartments to really fill. I mean, there was only like 8 real places they could go, but it felt like you guys always went to the room first where they had just
Right.
invaded. Um, although they did go in the electrical room the first time, but I felt like it was better tension to play at your senses a little bit more, and didn't have them like attack you right out of the gate. Would you how would you have felt that difference? Because like remember how I said in the beginning there was like, oh, you think you see something that flicked in the water, like I don't
That's
know
not
if you
why I
remember.
didn't go in there.
No,
I know.
I
Well, you
think you
didn't
need
go
to.
in there because you were like water, electronics. Fuck this place.
Well, that and like I didn't think I could fix it, so I was like, no, I'm gonna make this worse.
I,
Yeah.
I think it worked to build tension. I
Mhm.
think if the first time you see something it attacks you, then you've wasted a chance to build tension. You know, like if you think about like specifically like an aliens movie, right? There's always
Hmm.
signs that something's been here that may not be human. You know, acid melting steel plating or claws, you know, ripping through walls and insulation strewn all over, and
A
you know, so
discarded
a person with
like
a
egg.
bite mark and something moving out of your peripheral vision really
Hmm.
fast, you know, skittering across, you know, and it builds until you finally get the reveal, and then it means something. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought you handled that well.
the creature buildup was good.
But because I made the executive decision there not to attack you that first room because I was like, that seems too quick.
Yeah, I think it
You
was
guys
good.
haven't really like, and I'm not a master of playing horror games or anything like that, but it feels like having the monster just be like boogity right out of the gate would have been would have made it an action movie more
Well, if it had
than
said
a
boogity when it came out, you know, it would have changed the tone of the whole session.
It's true. It's true.
came out there kind of like in Spaceballs where it was just like hello.
Exactly.
Different game, different
I
game.
was thinking more the space herpes and ice pirates.
The big, it's close. They were closer to the space herpes and ice pirates. That's for sure. Shout out to Ice
Ice
Pirates.
pirates.
Whoever hasn't seen it, go watch it. It's amazing.
So, so I think, so I guess in just what to look forward to for Mothership. Do you guys have like Brent? I know you read probably more adventures about this kind of stuff. Do you have adventures or content for Mothership you've been looking forward to play with, or a hack of Mothership that you've said like, really want to give this a try?
Not a hack a mothership. There's different adventures I'd like definitely like to play. Some of them I don't necessarily know if I'd even want to do in mothership. Like this
Hmm.
one. This really kind of makes me think of a Blue Planet scenario.
Okay.
Because Blue Planet is all about submarines on the water world, and this really felt like a Blue Planet type scenario to me. Which is one thing that I think is interesting about a mothership is like you can do other games in Mothership fairly easily because the system's so easy. Um,
Hmm.
so that's kind of where my interest is just kind of seeing, like, I've read a couple of their adventures and I like them. Some of them I don't think I would run in Mothership because I'd want them to be part of a bigger campaign, and I don't think Mothership
Hmm.
would do that very well.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
wonder if anybody watching has played a campaign of Mothership and feels like discussing it in the comments.
Yeah,
Tell us
if
all
you've
about
played
it.
a longer game, let us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what long means for
If
Mothership,
you've
but if
been
you've played a
playing your
game,
Mothership game for 8 months or 18 months, please let us know. I'd like to hear how it goes.
Yeah, man. If they made it to 3 months, I want to
How many
know.
characters have you gone through?
Yeah. Do you show up with
yeah,
just a stack of paper?
just
The crew of the Orion has changed many times in the course of this adventure.
well, it's always funny. You're like, oh, you remember that contact I met on the space station? I'm that character now, or
Right.
Yeah.
or because there was one thing that people really seemed to like, and as I was reading through it, because I had it actually is it's a mega dungeon called Gradient Descent. Did you take a look at that one, Brent?
Mm.
So Gradient Descent has what I feel like is a really good approach to mega dungeons, and it seems interesting enough because it's not only just like go in a room and something
Is
happens,
this
but it
for
has some.
Mothership?
What's that?
Or is this for Mothership or a different?
Yeah. Yep,
Okay.
yep, yep. So Gradient Descent is for Mothership. It is a massive abandoned factory in space kind of thing. And it and what people suggest is that, obviously it can be inserted into an ongoing campaign of Mothership, whatever that looks like. It can be you can start your campaign there, or you can do a one shot there actually, where they have like just they basically say, well, if you want to do a one shot, you're probably only going to see a fraction of the mega dungeon, but you can kind of like isolate kind of your objectives and make it pretty interesting to do that. And I was like, and I was really wanting to run a one shot for you guys in this particular thing, but I was like, it would be such a waste of this to just kind of like get in and get out and not really just
Mhm.
kind of experience. I mean, you might experience some of it, but there's just so much to explore with it. It'd be like, one of those games where I still see people like posting videos of like Legends of Zelda where they've discovered new secrets or new combinations and or new skill sets where they, you know what I'm saying? Like feels like you would just go straight to the end and be like, got the Triforce, I'm out.
Right.
Like I didn't need any of that other shit.
We're speed
So
running this bitch. We're not even stopping. Just go. Just go.
Speed run the
Skyrim
Mega
in 12
Dungeon.
minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Which I mean, some people might find fun, but I feel like there's a lot to explore and a lot of really cool things to do there.
So I just thought of a whole game that I would rather run with the mothership rules than its actual rules. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a super indie game that I bought that the premise is that they took all of the like dangerous prisoners on Earth and put them on a ship called Gehenna and shot it into space, and it's actually ripped a hole in hell. And so like it's Event Horizon on the ship, but you're playing prisoners. Like you're playing not good people
Mm.
per se. I think you could do a facsimile of that really well with Mothership because, and again, you could replace the characters because you could just play other prisoners because there's thousands of prisoners on this ship.
Mhm.
So that's kind of an interesting premise.
That could be really fun to play with Mothership, and I think it fits well because if your prisoner dies, you just get a new one.
Right. You just have
You
a new
just
dude.
you just have a new sleeve that you slide into, and what is that? Transhumanism.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that I hadn't thought of that before. But that game is interesting, but it's very the production values aren't very high, and I think they had a lot of problems writing it. I'll find
Mm.
out its name.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what that was. So I think that as I think it because I think we have tips and stuff like that.
Is it
I
Abandon
feel
All Hope,
like
Brent?
It might be. Is that a space game?
I'm trying to think. Sorry, Mike. I didn't mean
It might be
jump in.
super hard to find because it was like I bought it years ago and it is mega small press. But that might
that.
be it.
Well, we'll have to see if that's it, and then we'll maybe do a dive into it later.
I don't remember the
Um,
original rules being very good either, but that's why I said Mothership might be the answer.
that's like the worst part is that like when you go, oh, I really like the setting that they've created, but the rules just they don't do it for me, and
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
what
this is
happens.
interesting. Oh, this is less interesting now. Yeah.
Because I mean, like when you the way you describe like Fading Suns or whatever it is, I'm like, oh, I really think that would be a fun setting to play with. And the way you described the rules to me, I was like,
The
I'd rather
newest
put
one
my
is
balls in a vice. Like,
the
no
the
thanks.
newest one was not. I did not enjoy the newest rules at all. Maybe somebody who plays it more often and gets better at it, it would be better. But for me, it just took everything out of the game. Use our
Yeah,
earlier edition, in my opinion.
sure. So, tips and tricks. Do you guys have any tips and tricks for players that we want to just kind of like coalesce into one little section here? Um, or did you want to share any suggestions for people playing the game for maybe the first or second time? Last things before we conclude.
Don't depend on combat.
Yeah, and like you're not a superhero, so try to be a regular person. Like try to react the way you think your character would actually react and not like, once more into the breach. I need to
Mhm.
And if you try and be a superhero, try not to be a superhero with the next character, because that first character is not going to do well.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, I feel like if I were to give one tip to people running this for the first time, I feel like just worry about the story and the atmosphere. You're definitely in a game that like play to find out because you can't predict what the players are going to do, and they're really freeform. They can fucking do whatever they want, and usually that's go exactly where you don't expect. So keep it loose, but keep it improv. But I feel like focusing on the atmosphere is a really key part of the game, in my opinion. Tease, do a little bit of tease. And if you're not sure how that looks, I honestly, this is the first time I'm like, read the Game Warden's manual front to back, internalize that shit. Because there is good stuff in there. Like,
Yeah, and I think that's why everybody loves the game is the work that they put in the Warden's manual and the suggestions
mhm.
they made.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think even as a person who's at least run a lot of games, I wouldn't consider myself like pro. I consider myself okay. I learned some good, tips, and at least it resurfaced some great ideas, and it put them in a kind of cohesive package for me to go, oh, that's a great way to plot my way through a horror game, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. Are you guys aware of anything new from Mothership coming out that we should be looking forward to?
There's just a lot of community content. I think
Yeah.
you should.
Yeah.
And they just in November they had their a bunch of Kickstarters that were all linked together. So all
Oh,
that
that's
stuff is
right.
probably, I don't remember what they called it.
It was like, because it
But
wasn't a Spooktober or something like that, but it was like
something
in
like that.
November.
It was like through November. It started in mid October and through mid November, and there was a bunch of Kickstarters. So those should be funding, and we should be hearing about those. Should be releasing to buy if you didn't fund the Kickstarters.
Oh,
Nice.
I'll have to take a look. I'll see if there's anything good in there because honestly, I feel like we can play some more of this game. We have to pick and choose. So, final thoughts. So, yay, nay.
Yeah, I like
Oh
Mothership.
yeah, I like Mothership.
I think you're the indifferent one.
I think he's a little
Yeah.
more negative than indifferent. I think he wants to like it, but I just don't think he does.
Well, I think Mothership tells a very specific style of story. It tells it well. I just don't know if that type of story is my strength, which is hard. I'm
That's
not
fair.
good at everything,
I
guys.
think it's flexible enough to tell a lot of different stories. I just think that they're going to be like it's going to depend on you making the story.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I don't know, but
and it's not going to
there-
be. It isn't going to be an epic story. Like you're not going to be
No.
epic superheroes in this game.
Well, and it was funny too because I still was like kind of keeping tabs of like how many fails you guys had. Still a lot
It's a
of
lot.
failure going on with dice rolls.
Yeah, I'm
But
never
is
gonna
what it
make
is.
it to level 100.
High score.
I was
feel like
ecstatic that I survived a scenario.
If you are making to a level 100 in Mothership games, the GM is fighting you with beach balls. Like he's just the challenge is the ship's filled with inflatable beach balls. How do you make it through?
whoa, look at that. Who would have put a bubble bath here? Oh no. And instead of it being caustic acid, it is floral scented.
Yeah, you're itchy.
Oh, you have a slight reaction and maybe a rash.
Yeah, I would say it wouldn't tell it wouldn't tell a comfort RPG story very well. I don't think.
Well, I mean, it could. And you just wouldn't roll a lot of dice.
You pour the tea, roll your dice. You failed. Take a stress.
Take a stress, scald your guest. You added too much
You
sugar.
you failed and spilled the tea on your table mat. Take a stress.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. So, but yeah, I mean, I like it enough to keep on wanting to play it. At least, this is the one thing I'll say. At least I love the community content enough that I want to keep on reading community adventures and stuff because there's a great ideas to mine in there.
100%. Yeah.
Like
The community's strong.
I am so impressed with how people have done that, and I can't really say enough about like how good the content is. The content is actually really accessible too. Not a lot of it's like, I think that's one of the things that like I saw a D&D box that was like $70 and I was like, well, thanks.
Right.
But I mean, as a person who's just looking for some entertainment for like a couple nights with your friends, $5 isn't that much to do, and a lot of them are like pay what you want. So it's like, I mean, I suggest supporting these artists, but if you really are,
Yeah,
that financially,
indie content creators are always good to support.
yeah. So I mean, like you can get the game in, and then when you can support them later, support them when you can. So, so with that, I think that's it. Mothership Revisited. We give it 2 out of 3.
Right.
3
Correct.
out of 5.
Yeah, 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3.
I at least had fun. How about that?
And that's what's important.
So, Jeff, other than commenting in YouTube's about how people like Mothership and we should definitely like it, how could they talk?
18-month
otherwise?
campaigns. 18-month of Mothership campaigns.
They can find us on Blue Sky, Facebook, Threads, and Twitter at Rollwise, or you can email us rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, thank you for joining us, hanging out with us, listening to us talk about games. Roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.